Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's effective note-taking workshop. My name is Cynthia. Happy to see you in the audience today. I should probably turn my camera on. Good morning. We are broadcasting live from the Chicagoland area. Iris Reading is actually based out of Chicago. So welcome. If you would like to share where you're joining us from, you're more than welcome to. If you want to share if you've ever taken a class with us in the past, that would be helpful as well. If you do enjoy the content, please don't forget to like and subscribe to today's channel, Learning Blueprint. Today's workshop is brought to you by Iris Reading, as we mentioned, a company based out of Chicago, specializing in speed reading and memory techniques workshops. These workshops have been taught in over 100 cities around the world. We're very proud of that, but we want to get to 200 cities. So if we haven't been to a city by you, then let us know. That just means we're gonna have to take a little field trip. The Iris Reading team will take a field trip too. And you know, we're actually now post-pandemic, we are offering these in-person classes as normal. Before the pandemic, we were doing this and traveling around the United States, actually around the world. I believe we've taught these workshops in Canada and Singapore and Puerto Rico. So yeah, we've been everywhere. Well, not everywhere. We'd like to go everywhere. So again, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about who we are and what we do, again, please check out our website, irisreading.com. Now, today we are talking about note taking. So if you feel like you're not a very good note taker, that's okay. I didn't feel like I was either. And I like to share that I'm still a student, so if we have any students in the audience, I can definitely relate. I have a BSN in nursing, and my first semester of nursing, I always share in all of the classes that we teach that I was a terrible, terrible student, a terrible reader, a terrible note taker. I mean, just an awful, awful example of what a student should be, because I wasn't necessarily sure how to take notes. And it's really something that's sad when you think about how, you know, in school you have to take notes, but you don't necessarily learn how to, and more importantly, how to take notes that benefit you, because we all think differently, right? We all reason differently. So why would we take our notes in the same way? And a perfect example of this, if you were just thinking about anything, whether that be birds, flowers, what you're going to have for breakfast, what you're doing this weekend, if you were just thinking randomly, do you think in full sentences? Do you think today I will go to the store, and then I will go to McDonald's, and then I will pick up that? We don't necessarily think like that, right? We think in phrases or words, like just single words. So then if that's how we think, why do we take our notes in full sentences? It doesn't really add up. And the purpose of taking our notes, again, is to help us remember. So do you see where the disconnect is there? And that is why we offer this note-taking workshop, because again, we've seen, unfortunately, a lot of students, and even those who have finished grad school and are working in the field, in a professional field for many, many years, have come to us and said, you know, I need to take something that works a little bit better. All the fancy applications, they're nice, but it doesn't really solve the root of the problem, which is figuring out what note-taking method works for you. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I will share my email at the end, so if you have any questions, you need any additional support, let us know, and I can get that information to you. The slides that we have for today's presentation, excuse me, we can get those to you as well if you'd like. So just feel free to reach out to an email, and also please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We are on social media, so if you do enjoy the content, please check us out, please support us. we're doing a lot here at Iris Reading. A lot of new things are coming in at the end of 2023 and hopefully at the beginning of 2024. This year we launched a brand new presentation called Comprehension Strategies. And so we've seen very good feedback on that. Of course, only an exclusive group of people that were already following us on our social media channels were able to see those presentations firsthand. So if you want to know what's coming next, please don't forget to check out the channel and subscribe. Now, we did say that when you're taking your notes, you're supposed to take them to help you remember. That's kind of the point of taking notes, right? So let's break down what we'll discuss today. Obviously, some different note-taking methods, the read and recall exercise. So if you, let's be real, sometimes we have to read things for class and we don't like them, right? It's like, oh, it's torture having to read some of those things. And I share this because I am going after a PhD in educational psychology. So I have a lot of things I have to read through also. And to be honest with you, it's not always the best when it's something you don't like or you don't understand, or maybe you do understand it, you don't care for the material. So we have a note-taking method, or we have uncovered a note-taking method that can help you in those times of need, because unfortunately, we really can't decide what we need to read through for class and what we don't. That's all assigned by the professor, by the teacher. We'll talk about some digital tools, and no, we will not sell anything to you today. These are things that we have found helpful. These are all free applications as well. We do not get points for referring you over or anything like that. They're just things that we have tested out as a team and we have found beneficial. I'll share what I like, and some of the tools that my colleagues use, they don't work for me, but that doesn't mean they may not work for you. Okay. And our final point for today, when to review notes, because it's not just a matter of taking nice, pretty notes, but it's also important to schedule out or to strategize the frequency in which you review your notes. Okay, and a little more about me so that you can maybe get a little context. I used to teach at a nursing college here in Chicago, and I did that for about 5 years before I came to work for Iris Reading. And I had many students over the years. I would teach anatomy and physiology, nursing foundation. So the first year of nursing school, that's my specialty. And it's a really important year. If anyone is looking to go to nursing school, if you don't give that first year your all, if you do not dedicate your time to studying the foundations of nursing, all of the structures of the body, how the blood flows, all of that, you will definitely feel the consequences over the next 2 years of nursing school, because everything carries over. And so I saw this many times. I saw that my students would suffer throughout the other semesters, and you would think, oh, well, you know, we're going to study about neurology, we're going to study about conditions of the stomach or gastrointestinal disorders, and so, you know, that's what interests me, not so much the foundations, but it's all tied together. And I remember having a student once that she would take her notes, and then I just overheard her saying that she didn't ever review her notes after she took them. She would just take them and then that was it. And so I pulled her aside and I asked her why, and she said, oh, I don't have to. I could, because that's what I learned in school. As long as you take good notes, you don't have to worry about it. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's not true at all. So yes, it's very important to review your notes. We actually have a mathematical equation that we follow with this, all right? So we'll share that at the end. Now, we know repetition is important when we're talking about our memory, right? The more you do something, the better you get at doing it, the longer it stays in your brain, right? We know all of this. But the problem is that do we really understand what this means? So repetition is important, but there is a difference between something called rote repetition, and that's spelled R-O-T-E, and just let's say practical repetition, all right, or strategic repetition. So rote repetition is basically mindless repetition of things over and over again and doesn't really stick in your memory. Have you ever seen these videos on YouTube of people who are singing like the Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem, and they forget the words, right? You might have seen this like at a sporting event or something. It's very uncomfortable to watch because for one, it's in front of thousands of people at really important sporting events. But you would think that some of these artists who who grew up in the US especially would have these songs down packed and in memory, locked in your memory, but that's not the case. And if you watch these videos, I won't say who, but you'll see that they form like the shape of what they think the word is when it's just like one really uncomfortable mess going on. So repetition is important. We have to make it strategic. We have to make it in a way where we actually are benefiting and it's not almost lazy repetition. Now, how do we read and remember with notes? Because the odds of you having to take notes in class and reading something on your own, they're pretty high. That's pretty much how class works, right? All over the world. So we have a 4-step process to better reading and learning. Now, I will pause right here to share that we are, as we said, known for our speed reading and memory technique workshops. Okay, so we discuss the I in the IRIS method and the R in the IRIS method in those workshops. But really quickly, we talk about inspecting. We talk about how we want you to get the gist of what you're reading before you read it, how many pages, how many pictures, how many tables, what are the vocabulary words, right? Just the overall assessment of what we're dealing with here. Then you decide if you're going to read it or not. Okay, so for example, I have a professor that will send over just, you know, all kinds of things at all hours of the day and night, claiming that the stuff is important, but after inspecting, I find that it's not. And seeing that I work a full-time job, it saves me a lot of time inspecting and then deciding, you know what, he must be bored or, you know, whatever. So we're not going to read through that. But you might inspect it and actually find that it is beneficial, right? And then we talk about asking questions. Now, this point is brought out in that comprehensions workshop that we talked about. We want you to ask all of the questions and we want you to answer all of the questions. Now, if you don't know what kinds of questions you should be asking, then you can check out that workshop for one, but for another, you shouldn't be moving to the final step, which is storing, okay? And I go back to nursing school because what I would do is I would try to memorize these things that were really big and really complex, but it wasn't making sense in my brain, so it was almost like memorizing something that was empty, right? And so my priority was more so memorizing things so that I could pass the exam. I didn't have a system in place to actually understand the information, okay? And so this is our 4-step process to better reading and better learning. Again, we are IRIS reading, so that is why we have that IRIS acronym there, hopefully easy to remember. Now let's talk about some note-taking strategies that can enhance our recall, which is a fancy way of saying some note-taking strategies to help you remember, okay? Let's look at this. This is awful, right? Absolutely awful. That gives me heartburn just looking at it. So if you've ever purchased a used college textbook, you might have found something that looks like this, right? So, I mean, is it possible that a lot of what is highlighted is important? Sure. But is it possible that maybe not so much? Yeah, right. We seem to forget something really important that we learned, like I think in like 2nd or 3rd grade, we learned that, or how a paragraph is written, right? We know the first sentence is the main idea usually, and everything that follows is a supporting statement or supporting fact. So we get that. Right? So why do we forget that when we're highlighting? That seems to happen a lot. You'd be surprised. So let's talk about some best practices for underlining and highlighting. Okay. So starting out with something that is we've noticed and I'll probably write my dissertation on highlighters just because this is something I've researched a lot. But the research is stating that when you read and highlight at the same time, that's actually seen to be a form of passive learning or passive reading, which means that you're not actually paying as much attention as you think you are. There's some kind of like gratification between the color and releasing some kind of dopamine in your brain. So, you know, so we don't want you to read and highlight at the same time. That's not helpful. Maybe it feels like it is, but it really is not. Now another thing, when you read and highlight at the same time, you're running the risk of highlighting something that is not important. And how do you know if it's important if you haven't gotten to the end of the paragraph? Right? So we need to think about these things before we pick up a new pack of highlighters. Now, I love them too. I love all the colors. I love the ones that sparkle. I love it all. But we want to strategize before we actually highlight. And if you must for certainty, like absolutely for certainty, you must highlight, we ask that you keep it as brief as possible. Okay, only the key words in the sentence, or maybe just 2 sentences at most. But we don't want you to fixate on the details that are probably not going to be important. And again, we don't know until we have gotten to the end of the paragraph. Now, when we're talking about taking notes, that's also something that we have seen, we've observed. And so we do teach these classes literally everywhere. We have taught them throughout high schools around the United States. We have taught them like at Google, LinkedIn, NASA. So we've observed a pattern across the board of people who will listen and write notes simultaneously, okay? And so one of the issues we find with that is that when you're writing something down, you don't necessarily have the full picture yet, right? So before class, you're typically given some kind of syllabus, or you're given some kind of outline of what will be discussed, right? And so we want you to prepare beforehand. Remember how we shared the IRIS method with you all? We talked about inspecting and rating. Now, while we're inspecting, one of the things we're looking for are those vocabulary words. Familiarize yourself with the definitions, okay? Familiarize yourself. You know, here's a fun fact I learned the other day. In the English language, just because you know the definition of a word, it doesn't mean that you will use it correctly in a sentence. Or in different tenses. So that's something I found interesting, because if you are taking notes in class and you think you know what the word means and you write out what you think maybe makes some sense, you don't know unless you ask, right? Unless you ask the professor, unless you ask the teacher. But the problem is that most of us don't figure out that we don't know until we're at home at the end of the day reviewing these notes with no access to a professor or no access to a teacher. And so what happens? Well, we kind of just push through reading the chapter, getting some kind of general idea, and then the next day taking the exam and hopefully, fingers crossed, passing, right? And we don't want that cycle to continue. So preparation beforehand is very important. Look at what will be discussed. Get an overall idea of the chapter. Figure out what those vocabulary words mean, right? See how they're used in the sentence. When we're inspecting, we're not saying you have to read the chapter, but you should at least read the intro and the conclusion and all of the headings and subheadings. So you get a general idea, you can add that with what you hear in class, you can ask the questions, and then write down things that make sense so that you can then memorize something that is correct and then pass the test, okay? I hope I didn't lose anybody there in my little rant, but very important to have a system in place, okay? So don't just write notes down for the sake of writing them down. Don't just write every single thing that the professor or the teacher is saying, because again, we don't know what that means. We don't have the context always, All right. Now, we have had a lot of people ask us what is better, handwriting your notes, digital notes, right? What's best? And we won't say what's best because that depends entirely on you. But we will share what the research says on this, actually. And we have found that that through some papers that we discovered on note-taking in neurology, which is a cool title, I think, note-taking in neurology. We found that when you handwrite your notes, it's a form of repetition. So remember how we said in the beginning, repetition is important for your memory. If I am writing something, if I am speaking and you are writing, you might think to yourself, what did she say, before you write it down, right? Because it's not as automatic as when you're typing. When you're typing, it's pretty quick. You don't even have to think most of the time when you're typing your notes out, right? It's automatic. So that's something to keep in mind. If your focus is to remember this information for a long time, then that's something we wanna think about. Okay, and we're not saying that you should stop. We're not saying that you should stop typing your notes out if that's something that you do. We're just saying think about it. Okay, if you're having a hard time remembering, just think about it. Okay, now how you take your notes is also very important. The template that you use, super duper important. Okay, so that on the screen is like a nightmare because, again, remember, purpose of taking your notes is to help you remember. So when you look at this, is it help? Are you able to remember it? Like, you have to get really close for one. You gotta get a microscope or some supersonic glasses or something that can help you understand what this gibberish all means. So a template is helpful for one. Outlines are great, right? This is something we've known for a long time. Third grade, fourth grade, we learn about an outline before writing a paper, and this is something that we would use, right? So simple suggestion, but a nice way to organize your thoughts so that at the end of the day, you are not drawing arrows and color coding and adding stars and legends and all this stuff to your notes, which we have seen, right? I had a student that would stay after class an hour and she would rewrite all of her notes, and I would say, what are you doing? And she'd say, oh, I just take notes one way and then I transfer them over to, and I was like, no, we don't have 1 hour 2 times a week for 3 years. You're going to lose a lot of time that way. So we found a better way to take notes for her. Okay. Another wonderful way to take notes is by means of sketch notes, and give it a chance before you hop off. Some of you may be thinking, I am not going to draw my notes out. Well, think about this. Think about when you think. So if I say flowers, or if I say dog, if I say banana, if I say sheep, right? Do you see the words in your head, or do you see the pictures of those words? Most of us see the pictures, right? So if we don't think in words, like if we don't think in full sentences, then why write out full sentences? Why not take our notes using pictures? Now, this is fairly simple, and obviously you don't have to be an artist. I mean, if you could see what I did here, this is hardly an artist level note, but it's simple. It's organized by headings. It's, we've got our pictures on there. You can add color if you want. You don't have to, but keep this in mind. Okay, just give it a go. I definitely think that we should try it at least once before we rule it out. You might be surprised, okay? Mind mapping, however, is my favorite at note-taking method, only because for one, I did mention educational psychology is what I'm in right now. It's what I'm pursuing. And so how we think is really important, tying that into when we take our notes, as we've already shared. So let's say I am trying to share something with you and you have never heard of what I'm sharing, never. Like, you've never heard of this idea, or you cannot visualize what I am explaining to you, right? It's completely foreign to you. as the day goes on, after we've talked, after we have met, you think about what I said and or what whoever said, right? And you're like, you start to kind of work through what was said, and you start to kind of understand why and who and what, right? It's called a thought process, right? We're not always able to understand automatically. We have to jump from one point to another point to the end point, right? And that is why we love mind maps, because it's not an automatic thing. It's almost like a 2-for-1 type of special. So you are learning and you are tying in note taking at the same time. Okay, so you have your one thought that ties into another thought that ties into your central topic. So my favorite method, there is so much information on mind mapping. Specifically, one of my favorite things, if you're interested, there were some studies that were conducted with 4-year-olds and doing mind maps, and how they did significantly better in classes than those that were just writing out with like crayon and paper. So give it, try it out. If you do want to try it out, we have 2 applications that we recommend. For one, xmind.net is something you have to download. It is free. It's simple. But if you don't want to download anything, mindmeister.com is a little better because it's online. Okay, so I prefer it only because it's a little more modern. The colors are a little nicer, and best is you can look at other people's mind maps. So if you maybe you're researching something and you're writing out your mind map and you have like a gap in your mind map, you can search other people's who by keywords, and maybe they can help you, or maybe their public mind maps can help you figure out what the missing link in yours is. Okay, Cornell Notes, something that we know, fairly popular, right? This is not, let's say, I remember when this was like the new thing, not anymore, but still it is a very helpful template to use. You've got your keywords and questions on the side, main notes in the middle, summary at the bottom. And I actually include another section here when I do my mind maps for examples. I mean, when I use my Cornell Notes for examples. And this is why I am the type of student that can have everything written out perfectly. But if I don't have an example to prove it, it doesn't fare well with me. I don't know. That's just kind of how my brain works. So if you want examples, you can add a little box there for examples. Monetary notes, and I think we have a TikTok on this as well. So if you want to check out our TikTok, we have been making some of these videos, mini series on the different note-taking methods. So this monetary notes, probably my second favorite. This was actually created by the founder and CEO of Iris Reading, who has a background in finance, and you know we can see that here. But let's check out how the system works. So for one, you use a spreadsheet, and I will attest to the fact that he is very highly proficient with spreadsheets. But here's the thing: when he shared this with me, I was like, no, I don't use spreadsheets. I don't. No, I can't. I can hardly write something on a doc. That's exaggerating, but you know, spreadsheets are not for everybody. But this system is so simple that maybe initially you feel a little intimidating, but it's actually not that bad. And please take it from someone who is, you know, I feel a lot older than I am, which means that sometimes I feel like my computer skills are not the best. But anyway, the spreadsheet, very simple to use, I promise. You have your title at the top, your chapter. You've got 4 columns, so 1 for chapter, 1 for page number, 1 for rating, and 1 for the note itself. Okay, so the rating 100 is an example of a note that is most important. 50 is an example of a note that is important. 20 is an example of a note that is important, but it's least important. Okay, so that's your guide. And then throughout the semester or throughout the year, you are writing your notes out on this spreadsheet. And when it's time for final exams or semester exams, while everyone else is running around panicking because they have no idea what will be on the test, you are chill. You're chill like a cucumber. You're fine because, you know, you don't have to worry about anything. You have all your notes here. You don't have to worry about losing a notebook unless you lose your computer. And even at that, if you're using Google Sheets, you're fine. We don't have a problem, right? So this is something that I recommend. I was, again, I was super apprehensive about using this method because I'm like, I don't know about spreadsheets, but it's simple. Just with basic knowledge of the spreadsheets, you'll be fine. Okay. Also, if you want to organize your columns from ascending to descending or descending to ascending, meaning that your hundreds will be organized at the top, 50s in the middle, 20s at the bottom, you can do that so you can prioritize what you're reviewing. I mean, it's a really good system to have on hand, especially in those classes that feel like they go really, really fast. Okay. And if you're maybe reading a note and you don't understand what this is, you've got a page number and a chapter number to go back to. Okay. So this is a method we really like. Evernote is a great application to use. Again, we're not getting paid for promoting Evernote, but one of the reasons that I love it so much is because I do commute to and from school. And so my commute from downtown Chicago to my home is about an hour and 30 minutes. So it's not short, okay? An hour and 30 going and more like 2 hours coming home. So it's far. And instead of hanging out on TikTok for the whole metro ride, I like that Evernote, if you're writing your notes on your computer, it will automatically synchronize to your phone so you can review your notes on your phone. And I would never pull out my laptop on a train in Chicago, ever, ever, ever. I don't think I do that in any major city. But again, if it's synchronizing automatically to your account in your phone, then you can review your notes, right? You can listen to the lecture if you recorded it. You can check out the pictures. You can scan documents and turn them into PDFs and work on those. If you have the Evernote app, I mean, it's a great app for students. We do have a presentation completely dedicated to the wonders of Evernote. So if you want to check that out, I'll see if maybe we can go live with that sometime next week, because it's a great app to use, and it's wonderful to help you organize your life. And that's just from a student standpoint. Imagine, all the other things. The possibilities are really endless with Evernote. All right, so we've talked about a few different note-taking templates and programs that you can use, but what happens when you're having a hard time concentrating? Then what, right? So remember we shared we'll have a note-taking exercise to help you concentrate, and that is called the read and recall exercise, okay? So what this is, you have something you don't want to read, or you have something that you don't like reading. You break up the passage by section. So you have a section here, and at the end of the section, you will take a note. Okay, you move on to the next section and you take a note. Now your note is proving that you have actually paid attention to what you were reading. So you're holding yourself accountable. It's like an invisible accountability partner. Okay, now if you didn't pay attention, you're not going to have anything to write down, which means we have a problem. Okay, so we're going to try this method out with Bill Bryson's A Really Short History of Nearly Everything. Okay, this is a great read in case anyone is looking for anything new to read. We are going to read and write a note down. So let me get my timer. Now we have to time these because our presentations are to be kept at under an hour, but when you do this on your own, you don't have to time yourself. It's just I have to, because I will definitely go over time. So what I'll do is I'll disable my webcam, okay, and we're going to read. You don't have to send me the note. You can either write it in your phone, you can text it to yourself, you can write it on a scrap piece of paper. Let's just try the method out and see if it works for you. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I disabled my webcam. I don't want to distract anyone. We'll start with the first chapter, How to Build a Universe. And at the end of each paragraph, just write a note summarizing what you read. Keep it brief. Make sure that your note actually reflects what you just read. So this first paragraph is short, so maybe just a set of words would be sufficient for summarizing this. Okay, so here we go. First paragraph, first chapter, How to Build a Universe. Go ahead and start. and stop. That was the first chapter. Okay, moving on to the second chapter. We're going to do this 4 times, so 3 more, because I want you to get a feel of if this is something that you'll find helpful during those periods of time where we have to read things that we don't like. Okay, so chapter 2, same thing. Notice that this chapter is, this first paragraph is a little bigger, which means that our first note will have to reflect that as well. All right, so here we go. First paragraph, or as much as you can read. Chapter 2, Welcome to the Solar System. Same thing. 3, 2, 1, go. And stop. That was chapter 2. We're going to do it again with chapter 3, okay? And then I'm curious to hear your feedback. Let me know what you think about this method, okay? All right, chapter 3, the Reverend Evans Universe. Here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Very good. That was chapter 3, and we're going to go to chapter 4, and that'll be the last time we do this drill. Same thing, read and write a note down. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, very good. That was chapter 4, the measure of things. Let me know in the chat what you think about this method. Okay, again, this isn't something you have to do all of the time, but if you are maybe struggling, this is a good one to have in your back pocket. Now, the final thing we'll talk about is the science behind why we forget things, because unfortunately we do forget, right? And that kind of sucks for us as students because we don't always know what will disappear first. But let's talk a little bit about how fast do we forget. Some of us might think we forget a little faster than others, and it's actually not the case. Some research, again, has uncovered that we're just so used to being hyperstimulated, it's hard for our brains to actually know when we are paying attention and when we're not. And so when we think we are, sometimes again we're not, and that'll cause us to think, well, I must just have bad memory, when in reality we just weren't paying as much attention as we thought we were, right? And of course, we're not saying if you do suffer from a condition that impairs your memory, then yes, that is one thing, but most of us actually don't. So the theory that we have a bad memory is not 100% accurate. Okay. Now, there is such a thing as the forgetting curve, however, and that means that as soon as you learn something, you'll start to forget it almost immediately. If that is the case, then when should we review our notes? Now, we did say we had a mathematical approach to memory, so we have found something that can help you because of this forgetting curve, right? And that is called the Fibonacci sequence. So Fibonacci is great. You don't have to memorize the string of numbers. You'll notice these two equal the third number. So 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 2 is 3, 2 + 3 is 5, 3 + 5 is 8. And that is how we keep going there, okay? Now, if we are using this as our spacers, I guess you can say, let's say you learn something at 12 using the Fibonacci sequence, you'd review it 1 hour later, then 2 hours later, 3, 5, 8, 13 hours later, okay? Now, what's important to bring out is this gap in the middle. There is something called the state of diffusion in your brain. So if you're not allowing your brain to relax and you are constantly jamming information into your brain, that's not going to work, okay? Although the brain is not a muscle, we can definitely treat it like one, which means that if we were maybe getting ready to participate in the Ironman or the Olympics, we would not work out 22 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? That's not healthy. Well, the same thing for your brain. Those long study cramming sessions, they're not really good for you. You do have to give your brain the opportunity to relax, right? Because that will help the information stick longer. Now, if the hourly basis spacing doesn't work for you, you could do it on a daily basis. You could do it on a monthly basis. You could even do it a minute by minute basis. So you learn something at 12, you review it 1 minute later, 2 minutes later, 3, 5, 8, 13 minutes later, okay? That is called spaced repetition, and it's really a superpower when you're able to combine that spaced repetition and retrieval practice. Okay, so retrieval practice is the practice of pulling things from your brain and putting them back, including things you already know. Most of us will fixate on what we don't know, but that's not the only thing we want to worry about. We also want to worry about what we do know. For example, if you grew up speaking a language, as I did, and then you stop speaking it for a long time, what happens? It will start to disappear, right? So there is a saying in Spanish, it's like something, it's hard to translate, but essentially it's like, if you learn something really well, you'll never forget it. And that's not 100% accurate. So we want to pull what we do know as well, kind of dust it off, you know, as you would a picture frame or something you have in your living room or on a coffee table. Dust it off, right, so that it lasts longer. One of the reasons why we love Quizlet is because it uses this retrieval practice method in the application. So retrieval practice is, for example, using flashcards, and that's why we love Quizlet. Now, Quizlet has everything. I mean, it is an incredible app to use. A lot of college classes that I found for myself are in here. But one of the main reasons I appreciate Quizlet the most is because of this corner right here called game-based learning. Okay, game-based learning. And there is a term for this, a research term called gamification, or gamifying your learning experience, which means that students who turn their reviewing of the information into a game are seen to do better than those who review it with a bad attitude or just with no enthusiasm. So collaborate with your classmates, collaborate with your, I don't know, siblings, right? With a teacher, create a game, right? Create a game, and you'd be surprised how much better you'll do when you review your notes in this fashion. So with that, we are wrapping up today's presentation. Please, if you enjoyed the content, again, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our social media. And if you want to check out some of the other courses we have on our website, you can do so. I have a discount code for you if you'd like. It's Book Lovers, all lowercase, and you get 30% off our courses on our website. So with that, thank you so much for coming. Don't forget to send me an email with your feedback. Let me know what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Let me know where you're joining us from too as well. We'd love to hear, and we hope to see you in a future session. Thanks for stopping by.